Economists have expressed displeasure at government's disregard of the budgeting process as per the Public Finance Management Act 2015 and regulations that require that the process go through 6 stages, and went ahead to introduce extra trillions of shillings.
It feeds into the lack of respect for the budgeting process, which is exemplified by the numerous supplementary budgets, and the fact that during implementation the budget is hardly followed. So it's a disappointment, but our biggest worry is that it's not clear how this extra money is going to be raised. Remember, we are in a situation where foreign funders have cut off or have threatened to cut off funding. We are in a situation where businesses are struggling. We are out of a strike where businesses have been saying taxes are too high. A free system is making it difficult for them to operate. So government ought to tell us, how are they going to raise this extra money? Is it a grant? Do we have a generous grantor who reached out and told us that we have 20 trillion? And then we said, okay, fine, now that we have extra money, we incorporate it in the budget. Is it that our oil and gas sector, we have some developments in the oil and gas sector that convince us that within this financial year we are going to raise that amount of money? Or is it that the IFRI system has shown that there's excess money in the economy that had not been declared, and therefore government is confident that by rolling out IFRIs they are able to raise this extra money?
Apart from the reality that small and medium enterprises will come face to face with this tax burden, government itself has up to now not come clear on how it will raise additional revenue. But David Walakira of the Center for Policy and Budget and Tax Policy says next financial year's huge budget casts the country in a shadow of uncertainty in the face of slowing donor funding and impending debt distress. He told NTV on the spot.
For already with the 58 alone, we never had told to spend at all in the first place. We are going to have about close to 43 trillion shillings to spend, of which only about 29 would be our own money. So when we fast forward into the 72, is to say that there is no new money that is coming from taxes. Already the 58 had the consideration of the tax bills that have been presented, albeit some of the proposals have been thrown out by the committees of Parliament. So for me, the extra then becomes to show that we have been a bit not diligent with our dealings with the Bank of Uganda in terms of debt repayment. So BOU has been clearing some of our interest payments as and when they would fall due. So that money that was being spent is indeed a kind of debt refinancing. So what now the ask has been, and we've been pushed to do it, is that let us indicate how much money we owe BOU in terms of interest paid.
According to the past budget, tax and non-revenue is 32 trillion shillings. Domestic borrowing will take up to 28.7 trillion shillings. External funding 10.9 trillion shillings, with loans and grants to take up 9.5 trillion shillings, among others. The budget described by some legislators on that day as a joke. Some we spoke to saying this is being overambitious and worsens financial indiscipline, citing government's failure to meet its obligations on redemption of bonds to the Bank of Uganda, which this Member of Parliament says was kept secret.
The government of Uganda therefore failed to reimburse Bank of Uganda 5 trillion of the money it had paid out on its behalf. That's why now it has gone to 9 trillion. The question is, that's why now government of Uganda had to commit another 40 billion to recapitalize Bank of Uganda, because as it clears, it meets other dues. Then you have to give them, so on top of the 9, then you are committing another 400 billion as a capitalization because of that indiscipline. So that's a first implication. The question is, where government fails to generate revenue to reimburse Bank of Uganda, then you know that economy is in serious problems.
But this state of affairs was imminent, according to financial analysts at Alpha Capital, who say that other than going back to moneylenders, there's no other way government can fund itself, given the current domestic revenue challenges.
In commercial terms,
I don't think government is able to avoid that scenario. So that one is dangerous because it's commercial, short term, and puts a lot of pressure on government. So I see that as an option that will continue playing out. Two, stepped up domestic borrowing. That has two implications. One is interest rate structure in the economy. So there'll be upward pressure on interest rates. Related to that will be the issue of managing redemptions. There are two large redemptions that are coming up.
And according to the International Monetary Fund, at its recent Sub-Saharan Africa Economic Outlook meeting in Kampala, saying Uganda is near 1 foot into debt distress.
All of the countries in the region are either at medium or high or risk of debt distress or already distress. Okay, so Uganda falls under the medium category. We don't see any systemic debt crisis, but the countries that are in distress are undergoing a very painful rescheduling that has been very difficult to achieve.
The bottom line is contained in the recent international debt report by the World Bank. And I quote, record debt levels coupled with high interest rates have set many countries on a path to crisis. The report further notes that every quarter that interest rates stay high results in developing countries becoming distressed and facing the tough choice of servicing their debts or investing in public health, education and infrastructure. Malcolm Musime, NTV Tonight Business.